Welcome to day 6, lab 14. Now in this lab, we will see that how we can go and retrieve data from databases. So till now what we have done, we have created user interfaces, we have created the customer screen, we have created the search screen, we have actually put validations for the for both these screens. But at the end of the day, when we talk about software applications, it's all about getting data from the database and putting data into the database. So in this video we will see that how we can get data from SQL Server using Csharp. Now in order to go and save data as well as retrieve data right from databases, right, the first thing what we need is we need a database management software. Now there are lots of good database management software in the market like Oracle, MySQL, SQL Server, etc. Now because this whole thing is about Csharp, it's about .NET, it's about Microsoft, let's go ahead and install the Microsoft database management software that is nothing but SQL Server. So go to google.com. Now remember that there are two versions of SQL Server. One is a paid version and the other one is a free version. So the free version is named by the term Express. So go and search SQL Server Express 2008 free download. Once you do that, you can see that there is a small link here to microsoft.com. You go to this link and you can go and download the appropriate SQL Server Express edition here. For example, if you have a 64-bit machine, then probably you can download this SQL expr_x64_enu, or else you can go and make a choice of 32-bit machine downloads. All right. So the first thing is go and search for SQL Express and install it in your PC. Now once you install SQL Server in your PC, all right, go to your Visual Studio. So click on View, click on Server Explorer. Now you can see that there is a small folder here called as Data Connections. For now, just try to follow practically what I'm trying to do. I'm going to talk about all these concepts, that databases, tables, connections, later on. So for now, let's try to concentrate on the practical aspect of the project, and the fundamental aspect, I'll tell you where you have to go and look into. Okay. So for now, just go ahead and try to do what I'm trying to do here. Okay. So right click on this data connection folder, what you see here, and say create a new SQL Server database, and type here local host and select use Windows authentication. Okay. And we'll say here, let's give a nice database name here. I'm going to say mycustdb, and let's say OK. Now the time you say OK, you can see that your mycustdb has been created in the data connections folder here. Okay. Click on the plus sign and you can see lots of elements in this mycustdb which has been created. Now this thing called as mycustdb here is nothing but the database. A database has lots of tables inside it where actually your data gets stored. Okay. So in other words, you can think about database as one big Excel sheet. Okay. And inside the Excel sheet, these sheets, right? Sheet 1 and sheet 2 are nothing but your tables. So for example, you can have one big Excel sheet called as customer, and inside the customer Excel sheet you can have, inside the customer Excel you can have something like this. You can have a sheet which actually has a record of customer and country. Okay, so you can call this sheet as the customer sheet, and then you can have another sheet called as country, right, where you can have country code and country name. Okay, country code and country name. So you can see that one big thing which we have just created is nothing but the database mycustdb, which is equivalent to this book, Excel book called as customer or whatever you name it. And inside the Excel book you can have lots of sheet like the customer sheet and the country sheet. So these sheets are called as tables. Okay. So now that we have created our mycustdb database, the next thing is we have to go and create these small sheets inside it which is called as tables. So let's go ahead and create a simple table here for customer. So we'll say that this table will have two columns. One is the customer name, and currently we'll just keep it n_10. I'm going to talk about these data types later on. And second, we will have city, or I'll say we'll have country where he stays in. Okay. Again, this will keep it as it is, n_10. Okay. And let's press Ctrl S, or you can go and press this sign here, save table, and let's give a name to this saying customer table. Great. So let's again go back to a Server Explorer. So we have created My Customer database, and inside the My Customer database we have a simple table here called as the customer table. Now let's go ahead and add some records or add some data into this customer table. So right click on this customer table and say show table data, and let me go and add some records here. So I'm going to say here, okay, the first customer is Shiv, India. Second customer is Raju, Nepal. Third customer is Sham, India. Then we have Khadak, Nepal. Great. So I've made some kind of data entry here, which will help us to we can utilize this data into our program. Okay, so I have created a database called as mycusdb. Then I went ahead and I created a simple table called as customer table, and then I have added some records into that. Now, so we have our database here, okay, and we have some data into this customer table. Now we would like to take this data and display this data must be on this grid here called as the search customer. So we would like to take that customer records and we would like to bind that data to this FRM search customer form which we have created in our previous classes. Okay, so how do we do that? So in simple words, what we want to do is that we have created a user interface of customer, right, in Csharp, and then we have SQL Server here, where we have created our database and tables. So now how do I connect from this user interface, to this SQL Server? That's done by this great component here called as ADONET. ADONET helps you to go and connect from your user interface to the database. It helps you to send data to the user to the SQL Server, and it also helps you to retrieve data from SQL Server. So let's go ahead and try to see that how we can use ADONET to get data from SQL. So here's our form search customer, where we are going to go and display the customer data, right? And we have a very simple button here called as search customer. So let's double click on it and let's go ahead and start writing some code, which will help us to get the data from SQL Server into this grid here. You remember, right? This we had also put a grid into this form. Okay, so we want that the customer name as well as the country data should be displayed in this grid. So let's go ahead to the button click of search customer. Now let me go and cut this code here. Let me go and comment this code for now, and let me move this code outside for now. For now we'll just keep this code aside here. Okay, so here we would like to go and write some code which will fetch data from SQL Server, and we know that we have to use ADONET. Okay, now fetching a data from SQL Server is a 4-step process. The first step is we have to go and open a connection. Okay, we have to go and open a connection with our SQL Server. Second, we have to go ahead and fire the command object. Okay, the third step is we have to go and take the data which we have got after firing the command object and bind the data, right? Bind the data to the UI. Okay, and finally we have to go and close the connection object. So very easy here, right? Great. So let's go ahead and start writing code, for these 4 steps. Now in order to go and open a connection to SQL Server, we need something called as the connection string. Okay, so the first thing is we'll need something called as the connection string. Now where do we get this connection string from? Again, go to your View Server Explorer, go to your database here, right click on your database, and you can find here a nice thing called as a property. So click on the properties and you can see here something called as connection string. Okay, so let's copy this, Control C, and let's go back to our behind code here and let's paste the whole thing over here. Okay, so that's a connection string. And what exactly is a connection string? A connection string tells where exactly your DB is located and what kind of security we have to use in order to go and connect to your DB. So I've created here a connection string and everything is fine here. Okay, good. Now the next thing is we have to use the connection object and connect using this connection string. Now in order to go and use the connection object, we have to do one extra step here, that is go ahead and import a namespace called as system.data.sql client. Okay, So we need to go and import this SQL client, because we are connecting to SQL Server, we will need this SQL client here. Okay, so I'm going to go and import that thing over here. Okay, I will talk about what exactly this import thing means. For now, follow me mechanically. Okay, freshers, follow me mechanically. Okay, so we have imported this system.data.sql client here. Now let's go ahead and start typing. So we're going to say SQL connection, obj connection is equal to new SQL connection, and let's go ahead and use this connection string, and we'll say here obj connection dot open. So we have done the first step. We have created the object of SQL connection, we have used the connection string, and we have opened the connection. Now the next step is we have to create a command object, and we need to fire a SQL syntax, a SQL statement over the table, over the customer table. Now before I start writing the syntaxes for the command object, I need to talk two things here. The first one is that all RDBMS in the world understand only one language, and that language is SQL, that is structured query language. So if you want to talk with Oracle, if you want to get data from Oracle, fire SQL. If you want to get data from SQL Server, fire SQL. So SQL is the core language for any RDBMS. Okay. Now what it means is that, from here, even from this UI or from this code here, my command object, will actually go and fire SQL to the SQL Server, and the SQL Server will reply it back with data. Okay. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to talk about SQL later on. For now, as I said, try to grasp whatever you can and try to complete this practical. Okay. So let's go ahead and create the SQL command object. So I'm going to say SQL obj command is equal to new SQL command. Okay. And now to this SQL command, I'm going to say yes, please go and take all the data from, select star from, this is SQL what I'm typing now, all the data from customer table. So select star from customer table. And the second thing what I have to provide to the command object is that this command object is going to use this connection to fire the SQL. So I'm going to say yes, use this connection object. So the command object needs two things. It needs, one is the SQL statement. So you can see that here's a simple SQL statement I have written saying that, okay, get all the data from the customer table. And the second thing he needs is that, which is that connection over which he can go and fire this SQL command. So that it's the connection which you have just opened in the step 1, the same connection object I have provided here. Now the next thing is we have to go and fire the command object. Now when the command object fires data to SQL Server, right, it returns in tables and it returns in rows and columns. The data is returned in rows and columns. Now this data, we have to receive it in our Csharp program in an object called as data set. Okay, what is a data set? A data set is nothing but it's a temporary variable, which has rows and columns. For now, keep this simple definition in mind. We're going to talk about data set in depth later on. Okay, so all the data what you get, from your SQL Server, has to come in here in this object. Okay, why? Because this object, then can be binded to your UI. Okay. Now, in order to connect this command and the data set, we have one more object called as data adapter. So data SQL data adapter. So we have to create an object of the data adapter here, and this data adapter object uses the command object. So he will take the command object, fire it to SQL Server. Whatever data you get from SQL Server, he will bind it and fill your data set. Okay. So I'm going to go and give him the command object you have created, and now you'll say obj adapter dot fill the data set. So just to make you understand visually what we have just wrote, what code we have just written here is, you have your SQL Server here which has your database and tables. You have a command object here, and this command object fires SQL to SQL Server. Now when the SQL Server return backs rows and columns, right, this command object passes these rows and columns to your data adapter. Okay, and the data adapter actually goes and fills your data set, right? So you can think about the data adapter is a bridge between your data set and your command object. Okay, so we can see that this is your command object, so that is this. This is your data set object, that is this, and you can see that this is the person who went ahead and he connected the data adapter, sorry, the data set with your command object. So that is this. Alright, so that we are done. And now once the data set is filled, the next thing is we have to go and bind this data set, with our grid view. So if you remember right, our search customer had this nice grid view where you would like to go and display the data, right? So we have to go here and say, okay, data grid view 1.data source is equal to obj data set, right? And finally we have to go and close the connection. This is a very important step, closing the connection, because if you don't close the connection, then it's possible that you will end up into memory issues. Okay, so very easy. Open the connection, fire the command object, then tell the adapter to go and fill the data set, and then finally go and bind the data set to the grid view and then close the connection. So let's go ahead and build here and ensure that let's ensure that there are no errors. So good, there are no errors here. Let's go ahead and run the application. Control F5, file, search customer, and let's hit the search button. Some problem here. Let's go and figure out what the problem is. So the problem is here. We are binding the data set with the data source here. Actually we have to go and bind the table. So we have to say here .tables.0. Okay. Why like this? See, data set, you can visualize as your in-memory RDBMS. So you cannot go and bind the actual database to the data source, right? So you have to pick up the table. So currently we have only one table, that is customer table. So what we have done here is that we have taken the data set, we have taken the first table from that, which is nothing but our customer table, and we have binded up with the data source. So you cannot really go and bind the data set or your database right to the data source. You have to go and define which table from the data source you want to bind. So I've defined the table here, that is the first table, customer table. Now this code should work. Control F5, file, search customer, cool. So that's a hard-earned output there, and as a fresher, I'm sure that you would really be thrilled by seeing this output. Okay, so in case if you're a fresher and you're displaying the first time, then really thumbs up from me. Right now, while we were doing this practical, while we were trying to connect from C# code to SQL Server, right, using ADONET, we have come across a lot of things. We came across data set, we came across data adapter, we talked about something called as SQL, we created databases, we created tables and lots of things. Okay, and those things I have not really covered over here. What I've done is I've just made you understand so much that you can go and see your output. You can do the things practically. Now definitely, one thing is that you have to go and do things practically, and the other thing is, as we have said previously also, you have to understand the fundamentals. So what my suggestion would be that please go and see our SQL Server questions and answers videos to understand how to go and write SQL syntaxes. So that's the first part. So we have like 10 or 15 videos in that. Do go and see those videos. And for ADONET, go and see our ADONET questions and answers series. So with that, what will happen is, your understanding of data set, your data adapter, and your connection objects, those things will be clarified. And by looking to the SQL Server question and answer series, your SQL will become good. So for now, I have just made you understand so much that you can go and see the output and, feel good. But at the end of the day, fundamentals are equally important. So what I will suggest is, in this day 6, please go and see these videos for ADONET and SQL Server. And before I end this session very quickly, one thing which I would like to say is that, this practical was a tough practical. It's not an easy practical for freshers. Again, please do go and try to use our Correspond support. So do go and connect to our Correspond support people. You can go to our Skype and you can go and add these guys there. One is Correspond support, Correspond support, and the second person you can go and add is Correspond support 1, right? So that's the second person you can go and add to, and also you can go and add 2, Correspond support 2. So in case you're getting stuck somewhere, you're not able to find the connection string, or you're not understanding something, go there to Correspond support, flash your ID of your subscriber ID, and connect with one of those developers there, and he will help you to understand what's going on wrong. Right, so I hope that you enjoyed this video. In this video we have learned how to go and display data from SQL Server into C# using ADONET. In the next video, that is on day 7, what we'll do is we will see that how we can go and push data from C# into SQL Server, right? So if you remember, right, we had created one more screen here called as the enter customer. So we'll see that how we can use this enter customer screen to go and push data to SQL Server. So keep enjoying these videos. Let's learn C# step by step. We have 60 days to go, and please go and add these Skype IDs in case you're getting stuck. But when you add these Skype IDs, make sure that you flash your subscriber ID. In case your subscriber ID is not present or it is not active, we will not be helping you out. So ensure that when you go and talk with the support people, please ensure to flash your subscriber ID. Thank you so much.